Hey, yo, welcome back. This is Devin Hillsdon-Smith, your friendly neighborhood site selector, and this is Site Selectors Are People Too. We are on episode 8. Man, 2 away from 10 here. I I tell you what, by spending so much time recording these podcasts, I feel like I'm actually getting some of my natural desire to just talk out of the way. And so otherwise, I feel as though I've calmed down a bit. So this has been quite therapeutic for me to some extent. Giving me an opportunity to kind of word vomit everything I'm thinking in an organized manner and move on to the next thing. So it is 5:20 p.m. on Friday, and so we're going to dig right into this. I think this is going to be an interesting topic. We're going to go beyond the surface, and we're going to explore the realities of site selecting. Something that is, it's a topic that often remains hidden behind the scenes, right? The life of a site selector. Economic developers see site selectors at conferences, see their, quote unquote, glamorous posts all over LinkedIn, all their travel, see them for project visits, but what actually happens in the life of a site selector, right? So that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to go through we're going to tackle it kind of in a myth and reality format here for the first part. We're going to kind of go through the grass is greener, or is it? We're then going to get into some of what I think are the things that motivate site selectors to do what we do. And then I'm going to run you through a day in the life, literally from wake to sleep. And we're just going to open this thing up a little bit. The next episode then I think is I'm going to backtrack to when I was an economic developer and give you a day in the life of an economic developer, right? So we're going to flip the script on the next episode. We do still have some stories from the road incoming. I've recorded a few, just have not had the time to take them into production, but keep an eye out for those. I've got a few of them from around the country at this point, and they are fascinating discussions. Every single one of them is unique. And I'm learning a lot in having these chats as well, not only about the individuals that are economic developers, but what's going on in their communities, right? So let's get into it. We're going to peel back the layers here and explore the complexities beyond the conference halls. So number one in this first, the grass is greener, or is it, right? So there's a perception that, site selectors have made it. They have it made, right? Jet setting to conferences, sipping coffee and other stronger drinks in hotel lobbies and sealing deals. As I mentioned before, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So when you see a site selector traveling around, especially to conferences, you have to remember, for the majority of us, that's not the crux of our work. Our work is intense data crunching, client management, project management. It's far more grounded than just traveling around and speaking at conferences and hobnobbing and chatting, right? That's part of it. That's the tip of the iceberg. So in reality, I'm going to go through, let's see, maybe about 5 different types of work that we engage in behind the scenes. So first of all, intense research. We have to perform really, really deep dives into anything from demographic data to economic trends, market analyses, site analyses, because we have to understand the nuances of each potential location, from zoning laws to environmental regulations. Something that I found to be a bit jarring when I moved from economic development to site selection was in economic development, you have to be a flippin' expert on your community, right? You have to dig deep and know everything, leave no stone unturned, right? What's interesting on this side is I have to somehow figure out how to become an expert in my own regard across hundreds of communities. And so staying extremely organized helps you with, recall on facts about each individual location you've worked in before. But that all is rooted in intense research. There's also, number two, a significant amount of data crunching. I was asked by a young economic developer, how do I get into site selection? Because I had just made the move, right? And my first response was a question. I said, so-and-so, do you love data? Do you love data? There's a pause. Well, what do you mean? I mean, you really have to love finding data, analyzing data, processing data, organizing data. Do you love data? Well, not really. Well, site selection might not be for you then. Because I am a data beep day in and day out, right? The job requires analyzing vast amounts of data to identify the optimal site for a client's needs. We have to get into data to allow us to evaluate transportation networks, utility infrastructure, labor market conditions, right? It's finding a way, and I've used this phrase before, finding a way to identify or create order within chaos. On a recent project that I worked, I went through 12,000 data points, 700 documents submitted across, dozens and dozens of sites. And we had to find a way to make sense of that data and have it work for us. So it's a lot of building spreadsheets, models within Excel, finding ways to plug in the data so that you can then turn it around and start to weight the strengths and weaknesses according to your client's needs. So the third reality, a day in the life or what the work takes, is part of what I just mentioned, client management. We have to manage relationships with a diverse range of clients, each with their unique demands, expectations, personalities, biases, goals. We have to act as advisors, negotiators, sometimes mediators to align client desires with practical realities. And sometimes it feels as though we're serving as therapists as well. Because this is, listen, when a company is proposing an economic development project, right, that represents a couple $100 million worth of investment and, a couple hundred new jobs. And I mean, that is, I don't care how large the company is, that is a significant and at its core risky endeavor. And these individuals typically within the companies were not hired to do this type of work. They're typically real estate teams, ops teams. Sometimes you get in with higher leadership that's running the project. But this is, I don't want to say it's a one-off, but this isn't the day-to-day business of a company, right? Evaluating sites. The day-to-day business of the company is whatever they produce as efficiently and as profitably as possible. And so it's unknown territory typically. Now there are companies, of course, that have entire real estate teams that are extremely good at this type of work, which makes it an even more interesting dynamic with a site selector. But it's wading into the unknown with them. And the reason why I said we have to act like therapists sometimes is you have to help them mentally and psychologically get through the process, because it's very roll your sleeves up, down and dirty at first as you're collecting data and you're making decisions. How are we going to eliminate, various areas of the country or various sites? So the fourth reality, the work that goes into being a site selector, is kind of combines all these. It's navigating challenges, right? We face challenges such as fast track expectations, globalization, strict environmental legislation, tightening labor availability, scarcity of certain labor skills, scarcity of solid real estate, utility consolidations. All of these trends and aspects are creating challenges that make site selection an increasingly complex task. You may look at a community in 1 year for a project, and 2 years later, you come back with another project expecting everything's going to be similar or the same. Given, again, fast track expectations, globalization, tightening labor, communities are changing faster than ever before. And so that means that site selectors can't just rely on your old data. You have to get back in and you have to figure out how to apply that data to navigate new challenges. Because at the end of the day, you are the expert on this. That's why your client hires you. Because, and the fifth aspect of the work of a site selector is because we are in the business of risk mitigation. We are responsible for minimizing risks associated with site selection. Plain and simple. We have to ensure that our clients can make informed decisions, data-driven informed decisions that will not lead to costly mistakes or project failures. And that means that you cannot ignore an aspect of a project. You have to constantly be thinking, what am I missing? What have I not seen yet? Right? So you have to be very, like I said before, organized so that you're following a process to ensure that you're highlighting opportunities, exposing risks, and baking everything into a final data-driven product that your client can use to make an informed decision. So in essence, the role of a site selector is akin to that of a strategist, an analyst. Our success hinges on our ability to sift through complexity and deliver results that align with the intricate web of business, community, environmental interests. It's a high stakes role. It demands expertise, diligence, and a keen eye for detail. So you have to love data. The second myth, and we're just going to go right back into data here. Second myth is that site selectors just analyze a few spreadsheets and voila, there's the answer. Right? Wrong. The reality of site selection is akin to it's like navigating through an immense ocean of data. We are tasked with a monumental job of analyzing and synthesizing an array of information, right? It can include demographics, logistics, tax incentives, infrastructure, environmental regulations, labor availability, market analysis. I mean, even just for demographics, understanding population dynamics, labor market characteristics, consumer behaviors, those intricacies are critical in determining whether or not the regional workforce and the region can support a project, right? It goes beyond just, logistics, although that's critical too, right? For logistics, you have to evaluate transportation networks, proximity to suppliers and customers, the ease of moving goods and services. Let's just keep going down that list there, right? So that's logistics. And building supply chain models is something, I'll tell you, I'm not an expert at. And that's why I'm fortunate enough, and most site selection teams are this way. You have experts who focus in on, logistics or supply chain, right? Labor analytics, taxation and incentives, capital markets, utilities, infrastructure. You have to have a multidisciplinary team running this thing. Because again, if you don't, you're going to be out in the middle of that ocean of data without a life vest, when all of a sudden you have to navigate away and you don't know how because you're not the expert. Tax incentives. Assessing the financial benefits offered by different jurisdictions, that can significantly impact the long-term costs and benefits of a location, right? You may have a client that you get all of these incentive offers back from all the different states, and they may go, wow, that state must really want us. That's going to be the cheapest state because they offered us by far the most amount of tax incentives. Well, if you assess it against the fact that their tax burden in that location is higher than every other location we're looking at, and you net it out, are you truly saving that much more? And oh, by the way, maybe the labor's more expensive and you're further away from your suppliers. And although it'd be more efficient and cost effective to ship via rail, the closest rail line is 2 miles away. And oh, by the way, the power is, for whatever reason, 1.5 times the amount per kilowatt hour than it is in the majority of our other locations, right? So you can't just look at one factor of influence, in this case, tax incentives, and just assume that, well, that state offered us the most, therefore they want us the most, it's going to be the most cost effective to operate there. Too simplistic. Infrastructure. We have to scrutinize existing utilities, telecommunications offerings, and the physical infrastructure to ensure they meet the operational needs of the client. Now, my clients are typically those that they're manufacturer intensive, and so you're not typically going to find a location that's plug and play, right? They can move in and the power is already to that building or to that site. There's enough water capacity. The local wastewater treatment plant has enough excess capacity that they can handle your project day one. The labor is just ready to go. You have to scrutinize the existing capacities, and you also have to have conversations to figure out the ramp up schedules to when these utilities can get to the service level that your client requires. And then you have to determine, okay, this site doesn't have the utilities in place. Say it's lacking, we're missing a couple of megawatts of power. So is it going to be sufficient for our client? But everything else about the site it's the best one out there, right? Is there a way we can work within this restriction or this limitation on megawattage and work with our client to see if a ramp up schedule would align with their business needs, right? Could they get moving, and instead of being able to produce, full inventory day one, is it okay if they're producing a third or a half of it day one? But then we know within 3 years, the power utility is going to have enough megawatts to the property that they're going to be able to go full tilt, right? The answer could be yes, it could be no, but it's about having those conversations. An area that I used to be very focused in on, and I still am, just a different way, but it was my day-to-day life, environmental regulations, right? Environmental regulations, typically, the main impact is lead time. So if you are a plastics manufacturer, right, and you know that you're going to need to use so much natural gas to heat up the process, and because of that, there's going to be a lot of NOx going into the air. There's going to be the need for an air emissions permit, right? Because we all need to comply with the Clean Air Act, the Federal Clean Air Act, and the state level equivalents of that. Which location that we're looking at is going to allow us to get that air permit, right, to comply with the law as quickly as possible, assuming that we have the right consultants in place and we're being responsive, right, and we're actively engaged with the regulators. Some states, you can get a basic, minor source operating permit within 120 days. Some you can get that expedited. Others, it's going to take, 9 months to a year because there's so much public comment and public notice required. And that state's environmental regulatory office is just deluged by an influx of incoming applications, so they don't have enough staff to prioritize. It's the lead time is something that has to be taken into account as well. Typically, environmental regulations will not prohibit your client from operating and producing what they need to produce, right? Typically, it's going to be about a lead time. It's going to be about, and maybe within that, we realize we're going to have to spend a couple million extra dollars on pollution control, pollution abatement technology and equipment. Now, one way that your client could be prohibited from doing what they need to do is if the area that you're looking at is non-attainment, is a non-attainment area, under the Federal Clean Air Act, which means they're not attaining the standards set forth for the protection against the degradation of the environment. Right? If your client is going to be going, they're going to be a major source for PSD emitter, that is probably, if it's the right or the wrong, I guess, criterion pollutant, that's an area where you're not going to be allowed to operate at the level that the client needs to operate at. So anyways, site selectors have to piece together this intricate puzzle, balancing numerous variables to identify the optimal location for their clients. You don't want to get all the way down, right, the process, get all your incentives, figure out that the workforce is good, the infrastructure is great, the site is, sufficient, and you sign on the dotted line for a purchase and sale agreement or for a lease agreement and for the incentives, and then you realize, oh no, we can't even operate here, right? Because now we're getting into the environmental regulatory schemes, and it's a non-attainment area, and we're not even allowed to do our project. That is what you call a big F up, right? But when you're starting off, you don't necessarily think through. A lot of the times, the environmental regulations are an afterthought. I think that's the wrong way of approaching things, but it just is in this process because there's so much to consider. The process is more akin to solving like 1,000 crosswords simultaneously, where each clue is interdependent and the stakes can be higher, right? It's a challenging and intellectually demanding endeavor that forms the backbone of strategic business decisions. So the third myth versus reality is the client conundrum. So the myth is that site selectors wine and dine with clients. We seal deals over fancy dinners and handshakes. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, yes, we meet with clients, of course, but some are incredibly difficult, right? And sometimes it's just because they don't have the right team involved, or it's a very challenging process or project that they have to get through. They can be demanding, indecisive, obviously deadline driven, right? And that's why we're part therapist and part negotiator. And it's expected that the site selector will put together a careful client strategy, right? Because each client comes with their specific requirements, preferences, constraints. And then site selectors have to decipher their needs, their preferences, and priorities and align them with available options. So it's not just about finding a location, it's about solving a multifaceted puzzle. And, clients have competing priorities: cost, logistics, workforce availability, regulatory considerations, and more, right? You have to balance these factors, which requires finesse and expertise. And, the reason why I keep saying that site selectors often play the role of a therapist is we have to listen to our clients' concerns, their fears, aspirations. We have to understand the emotional stakes involved in site selection. Like I said before, this is typically not the day-to-day of your client's team. They're probably experiencing anxiety about making the right decision, the impact on their business, their employees, their communities that they operate within. Site selectors have to provide reassurance, guidance, and empathy. So we can't just be fantastic data managers, right? We have to be fantastic communicators with strong interpersonal relationship skills. Because we have to help clients navigate uncertainties, address fears, build confidence. It's not just about the data, although it's all rooted within the data. It's about understanding human psychology. Now, we also have to have strong negotiation skills, right? We are part negotiators. We negotiate lease terms if we're in the right profession, incentives, contractual agreements. We have to advocate for our clients' best interests while maintaining positive relationships with economic developers and other partners. It involves a delicate balance. Right? We have to push for favorable terms without alienating local authorities or landlords. It's a high-stakes game where trust and diplomacy matter, right? Remember from the last episode, it was all about trust. We talked about where does negotiation end and manipulation begin, right? Where is that line? And how do you ensure that you're pushing for and advocating for your client without crossing the line? Because whether it's tax abatements, infrastructure improvements, workforce training programs, we have to negotiate to secure the best deal for our clients. And the final thing is we're constantly under deadline-driven pressure, right? Deadlines loom large in site selection. Economic developers experience this with RFIs with, week turnaround time or whatever ridiculous average we're at now. But clients expect timely results. Now, site selectors are juggling multiple projects with multiple clients, each with their own timeline. And so you have to be extremely organized and extremely efficient with your time to be able to handle these types of deadlines. The pressure to deliver within tight schedules can be intense. It's not just about meeting project milestones, it's about meeting clients' expectations. And so there's sleepless nights, rapid decision making, meticulous planning. The clock ticks and every minute counts. So the fourth myth versus reality that we're going to talk about here, and then we're going to tackle a fifth one and we're going to go to break. Fourth one is kind of tied into negotiation, but it's the art of persuasion, right? The myth is that site selectors just present PowerPoint slides and charm the clients. Reality is that we have to create narratives, selling not just a location, but a vision, right? We're storytellers, weaving economic impact with community growth. The reality of site selection is far more profound and impactful than just schmoozing. We're there to sell a vision for the future without going beyond the data. So we have to craft narratives. We have to weave together stories that encapsulate not only the tangible benefits of a location, but also its potential to transform a business and the community it will serve. This highlights how a site can become a nexus of economic activity, bringing jobs, prosperity, growth. We also have to talk about, economic impact, right? The narrative includes a detailed analysis of how the chosen site will contribute to the local and regional economy. This might involve projections of job creation, tax revenue, multiplier effects on the surrounding area, right? So our clients aren't our only audience. We're also trying to make sure that the impacts of our projects are fully understood by the communities that we're talking to. Because site selectors have to emphasize the symbiotic relationship between a business and its community. We have to explain how a company can integrate into the local fabric, support community initiatives, enhance the quality of life for residents. And by telling a story, site selectors then have to create an emotional connection with their audience. I said we swim in this ocean of data. We're trying to find order within chaos, but we have to, when then speaking with communities and with our client, we have to make that data come alive. We have to transform numbers and statistics into a vivid picture of what the future could hold, for better or for worse, right? And we're constantly working and striving to make complex ideas more simple, because a well-crafted narrative simplifies complex ideas. It helps clients understand the multifaceted considerations of their site selection project, from logistical complexities to workforce dynamics. And through storytelling, we can engage our clients on a deeper level, inspiring them to see beyond the immediate transaction, right? Just that big dollar figure the state threw at them, to the long-term possibilities that a new location offers. So in summary, the art of persuasion in site selection is about much more than just presenting facts. It's about telling a story that resonates on an intellectual and emotional level, convincing clients and communities that they're not just investing in a piece of real estate, but in a future full of promise, opportunity, and success. So the final myth versus reality I'll tackle here, and then we're going to go to break, is myth. Site selectors sleep soundly after a successful project. We get our work done and we go to bed, right? But in reality, at least for me, we lose sleep over deadlines, conducting feasibility studies, balancing client expectations. My brain at least races like a stock market ticker most days. Like we mentioned before, there's always looming deadlines. We're frequently under the pressure of tight deadlines. Even after one project ends, The countdown for the next one begins, with client expectations and project timelines typically overlapping. The work also doesn't stop at finding a site. We have to conduct extensive feasibility studies to ensure the chosen location meets all of the client's needs. We have to balance expectations by aligning our client's aspirations with the realities of budget, location constraints. You can tell right here, I'm already talking faster, right? My mind is always running, trying to analyze data, strategizing next steps, preparing for potential challenges. And yeah, that can lead to restless nights. The other thing as well is that, in our quest for perfection, we were often, by the time we're done doing our work in a day, we might find ourselves with a sleepless night because we're reviewing past projects, trying to learn from them, thinking about how we can improve our future efforts with clients, become better, continuous improvement. So in essence, there's so much going on and the deadlines are so strict that yeah, there's sleepless nights in this profession. It's tiring, but it's rewarding. And after the break, let's get into why it's so rewarding. I just painted this picture, this horrendous picture of how much work goes into site selection. Why do we do what we do? Talk soon. All right, we're back. So let's get into why we do what we do. We're not just gluttons for punishment, although some days it feels like it. For me, there's three main reasons why I made the decision to leap into site selection. Number one, I really enjoy an intellectual challenge, right? That's what keeps me going. Number two, I had an interest on making an impact on more communities than just the one that I served. Right, so community impact is another motivator for site selectors. And the third reason was there's always that thrill of discovery, right? As we're exploring forgotten factories and abandoned railroads and repurposing sites into economic engines, it's kind of like urban archaeology to an extent. So the first one, right, solving puzzles, intellectual gratification. We are constantly trying to find a way to find the perfect fit. Right? We're meticulously analyzing each cell or potential site, ensuring that it fits within the larger grid of the client's operational needs and strategic goals. We get to take a whole host of information about accessibility, labor markets, infrastructure, and figure out where they align most perfectly to support the client's long-term success. This is the whole finding order within chaos. And it truly is intellectually gratifying. There's real world stakes in this profession. The stakes are high. Decisions made by site selectors can influence the economic fate of communities, the success of a business, the livelihoods of potentially thousands of employees. Right now, that's daunting to consider. That is highly daunting. But it's something that motivates me to do the best I can do. There's a significant amount of dynamic problem solving, right? Each project presents a unique set of challenges and variables, making the role of the site selector dynamic and ever evolving. No day is the same for me. We're going to get into kind of the stereotypical or typical day in the life of a site selector, but no day is the same for me because markets are changing, conditions are changing, challenges and variables are changing. And so for me, it's like my job is a constant puzzle. And I enjoy puzzles. I enjoy looking at the blank sheet of paper or all of the, if it's like a Sudoku puzzle, all of the different cells and starting basically from nothing and creating sense, finding the reality within the situation. Now that's not for everybody, right? Some folks are going to hear this and go, my God, Devin, that sounds horrible. Okay. Well, then this isn't for you, right? It's not. I wasn't sure at first when I got into it if this is for me. I can tell you now that I'm excited daily to wake up and solve a new challenge, right? Am I still afraid that I'm going to screw up? Absolutely. Anxiety, if you ever don't have that feeling, that nervousness in your gut going into something, that probably indicates you don't care anymore. Thankfully, my stomach is an absolute knot of nerves every day, so that means I must really care. But here's why, right? The number 2 reason why we do what we do, community impact. It's beyond the spreadsheet cells. I am passionate about community impact, jobs, growth, revitalization. It's the heartbeat of this profession. Site selectors understand that our decisions ripple through communities. We recognize that economic development isn't just about profit margins, right? It's about people, neighborhoods, quality of life, jobs, right? Creating employment opportunities at the core of economic development. Every job generated by a new business has a direct impact on an individual and their family. It provides stability, income, sense of purpose. And it's not just the direct employment by, this massive new factory that's coming to town. When a company sets up shop, it often relies on local suppliers, contractors, service providers. It creates an ecosystem of interconnected businesses that strengthens the community fabric. Now, what's really cool is when you get to also combine some revitalization, brownfield redevelopment. I like to seek out locations that I can breathe new life into neglected areas. Right now, there's times when you're unfortunately going to have to prioritize, because of the nature of the project, a greenfield site, right? Which I never like the idea of replacing good, profitable agricultural land with a factory, when there are brownfield sites out there that might require a little bit more investigation, but they could be great for the project. Brownfield development, repurposing old factories, transforming blighted spaces, that all contributes to community revitalization. Right? I've seen it throughout my time working in Indiana. The old Studebaker factory, where they produced, the old Studebaker cars, right, up in South Bend, Indiana. It sat vacant for decades when they shut down. And that community couldn't help but live within the shadow of the demise of Studebaker. Thankfully, today, it's been redeveloped into a technology center, right? They spent a lot of money to get that up and running. And now it is a symbol of hope, economic opportunity, but they maintained the old look and the facade of that building. It is an amazing project. Because site selection also contributes to quality of life. A thriving business environment enhances the overall quality of life. It brings amenities, cultural events, recreational opportunities, and makes a place more vibrant and attractive for residents. Now, the other spin-off effect is that economic development often involves partnerships with educational institutions. So we have to consider the availability of skilled labor and workforce training programs, ensuring that communities have access to learning opportunities. By bringing a new industry to town, if it's a strong enough community and they have a strong enough relationship with their workforce partners, you can create a whole new pipeline and certification or associates program within the local tech college to support this company, right? Which means more and more folks are learning more and more new skills. Vibrant communities foster social connections. People gather at local businesses, parks, events. And at least for me, I aim to create environments where residents feel a sense of belonging when I'm working a project, making sure it's the right fit. And finally, site selectors think beyond the immediate gains, right? We think about the legacy that these companies will leave behind. Envision communities that will thrive for generations, a place where children will grow up, businesses will flourish, and memories are made because your client and you made the decision to bring that massive economic development project to town and revitalized an area of that community. And so the third reason why I do site selection, right? I'm going to keep this brief because it kind of weaves the other two together, but it's the thrill of discovery. The truth that we uncover is far more exciting than what one may assume, right? I get to be a modern day community explorer. I get to uncover the potential in places that others may have overlooked, right? I talked about forgotten factors like the Studebaker factory. Some may see rust and despair. I see a future where these spaces can be revitalized into bustling centers of commerce and innovation. By repurposing sites, we can ignite new economic activity, transform neglected areas into hubs of opportunity, foster job creation, community development, economic growth. Successful site selection is a collaborative effort. It involves working with local communities, understanding their history, and aligning our client's project with their hopes for the future. Now, it's not without challenges. We have to navigate regulatory concerns, zoning laws, sometimes public skepticism. However, I find these challenges only add to the thrill of discovery and the satisfaction of bringing new life to forgotten spaces. So, in essence, the role of a site selector is not just about finding locations, it's about discovering potential, crafting a vision, and playing a pivotal role in the narrative of your client's success and the community's future. So we're going to take one last break, and when we come back, I'm going to walk you through a day in life, and we're going to call it a wrap. See you in a sec. All right, we're back. So let's dig straight into it. What's a day in the life look like? Now, there's no 2 days are the same, right? So we're going to talk about when I'm actually at home. I would say that on average, my at home, because I work at home, my home versus on the road breakdown, probably 80% of my time I'm at home, 20% I'm somewhere on the road, flying somewhere for conferences, site visits, client meetings. Now I know that's going to get worse, right? I know there are, and I don't know how you do it, guys, but there's site selectors out there that are on the road, probably the inverse, 80% of the time, right? Taking a flight somewhere every week. And it's going to be interesting how you balance getting your project work done, your project management done when you're on the road and not sitting in front of your comfortable, familiar, right, setup. For me, it's a 34-inch curved screen right in front of me. I've got my laptop open on the side, so I've got two screens going at once. I know how to navigate the system. When you're on the road and you just have your laptop and you're trying to open up multiple spreadsheets and multiple data sources, and you're trying to keep teams going, it's jarring. It's more difficult. It's not your normal setup. But for right now, at least, about 80% of my time I'm at home. 20% I'm on the road. And I know that's going to get worse. But here's why. So, a day in the life of a site selector is effectively, I think the best degree a site selector can get would be one in project management, because we're project managers at the end of the day. So I start my day making sure I understand what's going on in the industries that my clients represent. What's going on in the capital markets, right? Debt and equity projections. What's going on globally to understand supply chain shifts. So I have Google alerts set for all of these areas, right? And so I'll spend, first part of my morning just trying to get oriented as to what's going on. Because, listen, I'm never going to be an expert in semiconductor chip manufacturing, right? That's not my bailiwick. But if I'm representing a semiconductor company, I need to at least make sure I'm staying on top of market news to understand what's going on with them, their competition, the industry in general, because that impacts your site selection considerations at a very deep level. So I start off by doing a bit of general research, get myself organized, right? And then, so long as I'm not pulled straight into phone calls, you get straight into your data analysis and trade-off evaluations. You get straight into your project management, right? So you're monitoring ongoing projects, ensuring milestones are met, keeping clients informed about progress, challenges, adjustments, doing your own analyses, drafting RFIs, sending them to the states, making sure that you're managing the responses coming back, responding to questions so that you get the best information possible, crunching the numbers, considering non-financial attributes, actually doing the work. For me, at least, that involves managing, depending on the client and the project, managing a team on my end, serving as that representative to the client, making sure that everybody is on task and on time. So there's the Scrum leader aspect of it, but then you're also managing your own side, the projects, right? So you're putting together project reports to the client, and so you're opening up, for me, PowerPoint and creating a project report briefer, right? Briefing with progress to date, and here's what's upcoming. Here we are, where we are in the schedule. Here's what you still need to get to us so that we can move things to the next step. I'm also, whether it's on my own team, cross-disciplinary team, or outside of my team, I'm collaborating with experts to ensure that we're uncovering everything. Collaborating with engineers, architects, real estate brokers, legal advisors, to ensure that the chosen location aligns with the client's strategy. I slightly mentioned before, but, also compiling findings into comprehensive reports for clients, highlighting the pros and cons and trade-offs, making clear recommendations based on data-driven analysis. Now, if my entire day could just be sitting at my computer and working my way through project management, Scrum leadership, collaboration with experts, just getting the projects done, that would be a day worth writing home about. But most days are interrupted by calls, meetings, travel, negotiations, discussions, engagement, right? I mean, any given day, I'm probably on 5 to 10 calls or meetings. And those are the calls that I have time to take, right? And then there's the other calls that are just consistently coming through, which you then have to log that for follow-up at some point. Something else I talked about recently is it's mind-boggling how many emails I get in a day, right? And I think on average, I get somewhere around 200 emails a day. Maybe a quarter of those are, junk or mass mailers, right? Maybe half of them on a good day. But trying to also manage your inbox around everything else and not allow your inbox to dictate your focus is a highly difficult task that there's an art to it. Trying to manage through that many communication points while you're just trying to stay focused on project management can be overwhelming. So that's why I continue to say that site selectors have to be extremely organized in their lives. Now, when I'm on the road conducting site visits, right, we're visiting potential locations, assessing existing facilities, infrastructure, surrounding areas, having discussions with multiple subject matter area experts, negotiating with local governments to secure incentives, tax breaks, grants, infrastructure improvements, negotiating terms with landlords, developers, property owners, building connections outside of projects with economic development agencies, community leaders, stakeholders, participating, if it makes sense, in town hall meetings, public hearings, community discussions. That's where it really goes off the rails, right? When you have to spend an entire day traveling, so that the next day you can be in a full day of meetings, and then the next day you're spending, the entire day trying to travel home. That's 3 days that you've not been able to sit down and do the project management work that pushes a project from start to end. So in summary, my day involves a blend of research, analysis, relationship building, field work, negotiations. My goal is to find a balance. It's a dynamic role that requires both analytical expertise and a keen eye for hidden opportunities and relationship building. So I hope this episode has been intriguing at a minimum. Hopefully I've gone through some aspects of being a site selector that as economic developers or as lay people, that you didn't know about before, right? What it actually looks like and what it takes to get this done. I could spend another hour digging into the details, how you build a model, how you manage an RFI process. And maybe we'll tackle some of those in other episodes. But for now, just know it's a lot of work. Even though we are more focused probably on the data and the project management side of things, don't forget, though, how much we care about the work that we do and the communities that we impact. It's never an easy decision to tell a community no, right? Because you develop a personal relationship with that community as you're going through the project, and it feels like you're breaking up with them, and you know the impact that your project will have on the selected community. So there's an emotional toll, but I don't think I would trade this with anything in the world. It's a fascinating profession. And if you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out. If there's any areas that you would like me to discover or discuss, let me know, and we'll dig into it. Because after all, site selectors are people too. Have a good one, guys. See ya. Just a heads up, views expressed in this podcast are solely my own and are not attributable to any employers, whether past or present. Thank you.